Hello everyone, this is Asif from Mango Education. Welcome to Hello Educator. This episode is from Mango Science Radio, and today's science story is on the miracle year and Swiggy.
Hi, Mango Science Radio listeners. Obli here again. I'm going to share you another interesting piece of information from history. So now that we are all extending our lockdown in our own homes, in the past few days and in the next coming few weeks, we won't be availing some of the services that we quite often do. And some of them are like, you order food through your Swiggy apps or Zomato apps, and you won't be using your Uber's taxi services or Ola taxi services, because these are not essential services for us right now. But still, the reason I'm talking about these services in particular is because there is something common among all these services, and it is GPS, Global Positioning System. So these billion-dollar companies run on GPS technology. And why am I talking about GPS technology? Because it has become so integral part of our life. Even our Google Maps relies on GPS technology that we have not quite thought about its history. I'm not going to delve too much into the history of GPS, but I just want to say there is one person that you may want to thank each time you use a service that runs on the technology of GPS. And of course, there are several hundreds of people who are involved in creating this technology and making it work. But there's this one particular person, not often thought about in connection to GPS, but is nevertheless very important. And his name is Dr. Albert Einstein. I'm sure you know this name, all of you. It's very popular, it's a household name. But thanking him for GPS, that is something that you may not know. How exactly? So in 1905, he came up with, it is in physics community, in scientific community, it is generally referred to as the miracle year. In 1905, he came up with 4 papers, and that would eventually change the way we thought about how nature works, or it had some breakthrough ideas and insights about how the physical world behaved. And one of those papers talked about something called as the special theory of relativity. Of all the different things that it predicted, one of the things it predicted was that time was not the same for everybody. So now, before that, the entire world thought that there was some universal clock that was very far away that ticked at the same rate for everybody in the universe or every object in the universe. But what Einstein proposed instead is that the time is not universal. It depends on people, and it depended rather on speed. Depending on how fast an object moves, the time will tick slower for an object from our perspective. So that is a revolutionary thought, and of course back then people thought it was crazy. But today we have evidences, strong evidences, we have technologies that are running on that thought. So let's keep this idea on one side. Now 10 years later, from 1905, he came up with another theory that was even more a breakthrough, even more spectacular. It is called as a general theory of relativity, where he changed the way the world viewed gravity. He thought of gravity to be a curvature of space-time and not some force that's pulling on between the planets or between two objects. And that predicted, again, that heavier or rather higher gravitational fields will slow the time down. So depending on where you are and how close you are to a highly gravitating object, your time will be different. So there are 2 factors, according to Einstein, that he proposed will affect the time. One is the speed at which the object moves, and also how high the gravity is in which you are in. So he said the faster you move, the slower the time will tick, and the higher in the gravity you are, higher the value of gravity you have, the slower the clock will tick. So these 2 ideas, people did not know what consequence they would have eventually. But when the satellites were launched, first by the US military, and they had the clocks that were built in, they were atomic clocks, and it depends For a GPS to work perfectly, the signals have to be perfectly synchronized. This signal that is being transmitted from the satellite and the receivers that we have here on Earth, they have to be synchronized precisely. They cannot tick at different rates. But people did not thought initially when they launched the satellites, and did not work well. The GPS satellites were not able to give the correct information because the timestamp on both the transmitter and receiver was not synchronized, and there was a lot of doubts, and everything seemed perfect, and they could not find the missing piece in the jigsaw. What could be the one thing that is not fitting in? How can this not work? And that is when people thought maybe something is going on. Maybe it is the relativistic effects that might be affecting this. So they thought, let us apply Einstein's idea into seeing if the clocks that are on board the satellites are ticking at a different rate than the ones here on Earth. And when they tried to attempt to find it, that is exactly what was going on. And the time difference was not much. It was about 38 microseconds every day. The clocks in the satellite that were on board the satellite ticked by about 38 microseconds ahead of us, so the signals were not matching, and eventually they would accumulate over time, giving us enormous errors in our positions. So once the computers were fed in with the appropriate equations that would compensate for the difference in the time, the rate at which the clocks ticked there, it is only after then that the GPS worked fine, perfectly fine. Now that they're so accurate, they can tell your positions to about 5 to 10 meters accuracy. That is spectacular. So looking back in time, it was Einstein's equations and revolutionary ideas that makes the GPS works. And if it were not true, if it did not work that way, if it was not considered into the GPS technology, your flights would not land in the runway at the precise moment it's supposed to, because all these technologies run on GPS technology. I hope you had some new information this day. I'll catch you soon again with some other interesting piece of information from history. Bye.